You mentioned Woodward a little while ago, but there's another scholar who I think is like loomed even larger over this. Maybe the shadow is imprinted on this class. It's Du Bois.
Right.
And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit, especially for your work on Reconstruction, about your relationship with like that intellectual legacy.
Well, Black Reconstruction in America, written in the mid-30s, a flawed but brilliant book, was...
I started off saying that like one of the contributions of your work was this focus on the labor struggle, and of
Right.
course the first chapter of Du Bois'
The
book
Black
is
Worker.
The Black Worker. Yeah.
Although my emphasis on the labor struggle came more from, not from Du Bois entirely, but from my work on Reconstruction, or that is to say the aftermath of slavery in other societies, where I saw the same kind of struggle over land and labor in the Caribbean, in British Guiana, in Cuba, in Brazil, in South Africa. This is the issue after slavery, and so, but Du Bois anticipated this, absolutely. I'm not trying to in any way deny Du Bois credit. He says, now he's writing in the 30s when the labor issue is at the forefront of national politics.
Doesn't he call the Civil War, it's like a general strike on
He calls the
slaves?
slaves running away to Union lines and other things a general strike. There's another very good book that was written on Reconstruction as the Communist Party's answer to Du Bois by James Allen, called Reconstruction, the Battle for Democracy. Du Bois had borrowed this Marxian language like the general strike and like the dictatorships of labor. He called these Reconstruction governments dictatorships of the proletariat. And the Communist Party didn't think this was a proper use of Marxian terminology, and Allen wrote this other book saying, no, they weren't dictatorships of labor. This is a rather arcane debate, I'll admit. They weren't dictatorships of proletariat, they were bourgeois.
Oh, of course, yeah.
It was a bourgeois revolution. Okay.
I've seen that criticism of your book too, actually, from the Marxist left, that like it can't be an unfinished revolution because it's a bourgeois revolution. It has these sort of necessary limitations.
So it was finished.
Yeah. It did everything it needed to, and the reactionary turn was baked into the cake.
I think these terminological debates can become kind of counterproductive after a while. But by the way, Allen's book is a very good book. It's not as grand and brilliant as Du Bois, but he did, Allen in the 30s was running a Communist Party magazine in Tennessee. That took some courage, and he later said, I managed to get it printed because my printer was a Klansman. He hated everything I was doing, but he was broke. It was the 30s. He needed the money, and the Communist Party paid him every week to publish the Southern Workman or whatever it was called. So he's publishing this Communist Party thing in Tennessee and studying Reconstruction, and comes up with the battle for democracy. Now the funny thing is Du Bois also calls it a battle for democracy. Whether it's a bourgeois revolution
Democracy,
or not.
another one of those terms like freedom, right?
Right.
That turns out to be really capacious.
Right. But to go back to Du Bois, yes, Du Bois laid out the alternative way of looking at this period as a positive period, as a period of tremendous accomplishment for blacks, of a giant struggle over labor and democracy in America, and as a struggle that was eventually, pushed back and reversed, et cetera, but leaving a kind of legacy of some kind. Although in the 1930s, it wasn't easy to see a legacy. After the Civil Rights Movement, one can say, oh, well, 100 years later they did this. Of course, that's a long time to wait. Yeah. In the 1930s, Du Bois was very, when he ended his book on a tremendously pessimistic note, that this was really, that the failure of Reconstruction kind of opens the door to empire all over the world of non-white people. That may be a bit of an exaggeration. I think empire was coming anyway, But, it's a great book, and he brings maybe the number one influence of Du Bois on me is he centers the black voice in that book. He says somewhere, the former slave is the primary actor of Reconstruction. You cannot write this history without focusing on them, which is what all the previous historians had done. Now, he didn't go around doing research like I did. First of all, he was in his late 60s. Second of all, everything was segregated. But he used published work, much of it, and there was a lot of published work of blacks or giving their voice, which just previous scholars had ignored. And so it's a very powerful book, and it offers you a different interpretation. But it's not just, it's funny, in the 1960s when the real revisionism took place, it was a civil rights revisionism. Oh yeah, Reconstruction didn't get anywhere, but at least we got civil rights laws in the 14th Amendment. And
so it prepares the way for the second Reconstruction,
right,
which is the civil rights
right.
revolution.
I think Stamp, The Era of Reconstruction, which is an influential book of that period, says, if it was worth 4 years of a civil war, he ends, the last sentence of the book, if it was worth 4 years of a civil war to abolish slavery, it was worth 10 years of Reconstruction to give us the 14th Amendment. So that's a very ex post facto judgment. That wasn't what people were trying to do, you know, just give us the 14th Amendment so 100 years later people could have it. But nothing about labor. Stamp's book, excellent, important book, nothing about labor, nothing about sharecropping. That's not, it's a book about politics and civil rights, and important, you know, and sweeping away all the mythology. Du Bois puts this issue of labor, labor control, land, 40 acres, sharecropping at the center. That influences me very strongly, yes, but I'm not, but the democracy part is also very important.